bargaining with the union to get students back in school, and if so, when?
So I'm available to help anybody. As you know, I intervened when the union went on strike and was very happy in the same space I'm talking to you from right now to work together with Superintendent Buettner, the board, and the union.
All right, everybody, this is Andrew Kraft here with NewsNOW from Fox. We're going to get off this press conference for now. We are glad that we had that live event there out of Los Angeles with Mayor Eric Garcetti giving the latest on the coronavirus news there in Los Angeles, talking there, answering reporters' questions about when he thinks schools will reopen. At the moment, though, we are following some of this news today out of the Defense Department, and right now I'm going to bring this up on your screen. This is a tweet from earlier today where Secretary of Defense, the new Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, has directed a service-wide stand-down to take place in the next 60 days. Each military branch will schedule a stand-down to allow each service to have, quote, needed discussions on extremism in the ranks. And we're being joined right now by retired U.S. Navy commander and former Pentagon Communications Director, Guy Snodgrass, who's joining us here live on NewsNOW from Fox. Guy, thank you so much for joining us. What did you make of this today, and what exactly does it mean?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and always great to be with you. What grabbed my attention was the 60-day length of period that General Austin, or I guess Secretary Austin now, has called for. Throughout my 24 years in uniform, we had stand-downs. We had stand-downs for safety. I was a fighter pilot for those 20 years, and you pick 1 day or 2 days. So to declare a 60-day period of time that the U.S. military is going to use as their stand-down period to take a hard look at extremism, to take a look inside the ranks, really stood out to me. But I think he did it for the sole purpose of just reassuring the American public that, look, guess what? The U.S. military is nonpartisan. The U.S. military does not get involved with political affairs, and wanting to make sure that gets re-emphasized to those men and women serving in uniform today.
Guy, though, just the idea of a stand down, can you, for those of us who aren't, in the Defense Department or in the military at all or retired like yourself, what does it mean? What does it mean for those, service members who are here, domestically and abroad? Would their day-to-day be affected by this?
It absolutely would. I think there's a misnomer from what I've read so far. The way it came out from John Kirby at the Pentagon, the chief spokesperson, was that, look, we've declared a 60-day stand down in the U.S. military. What that would imply is that the U.S. military is going to cease operations for 60 days, and that's absolutely not going to be the case. I think what they're really saying is that throughout a 2-month period of time, the commanders in the U.S. military are going to be given the opportunity to pick a day, maybe 2 days, in which they can conduct training with the men and women who serve with them to make sure that not only are they taking a hard look at those serving in uniform, but also to make sure that individuals serving understand what is within boundaries of the ability to take part in political discourse or what is expected of you while you're serving in uniform. So would this have an impact on your day-to-day operations? It would. Typically in that 60-day window, you're going to take 1 or 2 days. You're going to cease your operations. You're going to spend the majority of that day thinking about this issue that Secretary Austin has asked them to focus on.
Guy, in your view, is extremism a problem within the ranks of the U.S., military? Domestic extremism?
Before this incident, I never would have said that it was. I never witnessed it myself throughout my time in uniform. Not something that routinely came up. And so I was as surprised as I think many Americans were that there were so many men and women who have served in uniform, either previously as veterans, or it sounds like some who are still in active service who appeared at the Capitol during the riots. And again, that the biggest danger there is you just risk eroding the trust that the American citizens have in their military. And that's something that all military leaders, we focused on throughout my time in uniform. Look, that's a sacred bond. Americans love their military. They've given us so much support over the past decades and centuries, frankly, as a nation. And the last thing you want to do is lose that support. And so it's critically important that Americans know that no matter who is the elected official, no matter who is currently serving in the executive branch, that the military is going to stay apolitical. They're going to stay focused on the task at hand, which is national security and protecting Americans' interests abroad as well as here at home. And I think rightfully so. That's where the citizens want to see the focus kept.
According to NPR, they did kind of a breakdown of those charged in the U.S. Capitol riot on the 6th last month. Of the 140 people so far charged, 1/5 were veterans. What does that say about the community of veterans around the country? Is this just a very minute fraction? Should we not really take much stock of this? What did you make of that statistic?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the fact that 1/5 of the individuals who had faced charges came from the military, that's certainly well above the number of Americans who've served in uniform. So there was definitely a disproportionate amount of veterans that were represented in that roll-up by the law enforcement. I think the thing that really stood out to me is the fact that it's such a precarious position to be. Look, I was the benefactor of having served 2 tours of duty at Washington, D.C., in the military headquarters, the Pentagon. And so I was used to some politics. I was used to seeing how lawmakers or the elected officials can use fiery language to make a point. And I think what really became an interesting element of the tail end of the Trump presidency was that, if your commander in chief is telling you that the election's rigged, that it's been stolen, that you need to take part in defending your country, I think that's where things got a little bit sticky because patriots who've served, men and women who served in uniform, feel very strongly about America. And if the commander in chief is saying that, I think that certainly may have been seen as a little bit of a call to arms to at least come to Washington, D.C. and take part in the peaceful rallies. But yes, I think that there was certainly a disproportionate amount of military members who were caught up in the riot on Capitol Hill. And I think that's why Secretary Austin wants to take a hard look at this and just make sure that military members understand very clearly the important role that they play in American society.
Just want to kind of transition the conversation. We are streamed, so we have the time to speak if you have the time with us. And let's talk about the civilian military kind of that line in the sand there at the Pentagon. We know your former boss, Jim Mattis, got the waiver. Retired General rather. Lloyd Austin got this waiver. Is there some talk amongst those high in the upper echelons of the military that this line is being eroded between the civilian and military order with these waivers for the past 2 defense secretaries?
I don't think so. I don't think realistically. I mean, from a political standpoint, there's some measures to be made with the fact that you had 2 secretaries of defense now who recently came out of uniform service. That 1947 law is what prohibits a military member from serving after within 7 years of retirement or 7 years of leaving active duty service. I think what you're seeing is really more of a repudiation that you don't need to discriminate against military members, especially when it comes to being Secretary of Defense. When you think about an individual who would be very well equipped to serve as Secretary of Defense, look, that's going to be individuals who served in the military. They've walked a mile in the shoes of the men and women who are being asked to do the most difficult jobs, to put their lives on the line. And especially if you're someone like former Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, current Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Look, I mean, they've had recent relevant experience. They have an amazing amount of contacts that are around the entire world. They have personal friendships. They know a lot of these key leaders. And I think that puts them in a very ideal position to get something done. So where I would become more concerned is if you had, just like you did in the 1950s with the first individual who received the waiver, General George Marshall, he was an actively serving U.S. Army general. I think that would start to really blur the line of civilian control of the military. But make no mistake, whether it's Jim Mattis or Lloyd Austin, they're both civilians, and it's still civilian control of the military. That's a bedrock principle of our country, and that should never be moved aside.
For the new Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, what does he have on his plate? What are the priorities for the Defense Department now under a new administration going forward? We saw troop levels drastically be reduced under the Trump administration in our entanglements overseas. That was one of the former president's main priorities. What, in your view, are the main priorities of the Biden administration going forward with new Secretary of Defense Austin?
Yeah, I think, there's a few things that are certainly on his plate in the most immediate, one of which is to restore, as both President Biden and Secretary Austin have said, the longstanding partnerships and alliances that have existed between the United States and a lot of our allies and partners around the world. And so you did see some contentious relationships being built up from the Trump administration to the country of Japan, South Korea, and some of it was warranted. I mean, you talked about burden sharing and the importance of our allies holding their fair share and paying their fair share for their own defense. The United States military can't do it by itself. But on the other hand, it became such a contentious relationship that it started to strain those alliances, and that gave nations like China and Russia the opportunity to kind of wedge in there. And so Secretary Austin really needs to focus on the alliances and partnerships. He's already had a good job of doing so. He's taking stock of where the Pentagon is, especially from a budgetary sense. You know, Andrew, you just mentioned the fact that, yes, there have been drawdowns, certainly during the Obama administration, but then a little bit in the Trump administration as well with troop sizes. And so we can only imagine that the defense budget's going to stay either flat or it's more than likely to decrease because of all the amount of money that's being spent on pandemic response and on shoring up the economy right now. So if that's the situation, then you really need to take stock at where you want to send the military into the future. So I think those are two things that are certainly front on his plate.
And Guy, just last question for you. So we want to cover all the news out of the Pentagon today. This might be a little too inside baseball for some of our viewers, but we got news yesterday and today that the DoD has fired hundreds of these advisory board members and will conduct a review on their effectiveness. Boards like the Defense Policy Board members, the Defense Science Board, and the Defense Business Board. Can you just kind of give us an insider's view of what these boards' functions are, who they are made up of, and what purpose do they serve?
Yeah, you bet. And so what you're referring to, there are dozens of these boards that the Secretary of Defense and other defense leaders have access to. And frankly, I sat in on a number of these with former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. They're fantastic. You bring in experts from around the country, men and women, people who come from backgrounds deep in technology, like you mentioned, business, policy, et cetera. So you can bring them in, and they're going to bring a very unique perspective. And it gives the Secretary of Defense and other senior leaders the opportunity to throw challenging problems at them and see how they would tackle them. So what just happened recently is that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin basically said, I'm doing a complete ground-up review of these boards, so I want to take a look at not only the composition of the boards, maybe they've grown to have too many and there's a little bit of possible wastefulness going on there, but also the individuals who are serving on the board. So he basically said everybody across every board has now been released, and we're going to do a bottom-up review. We're going to take a look at what the structure needs to be moving forward, and then they'll reassign positions once they've done that bottom-up review.
All right, Guy Snodgrass, thank you so much for joining us today. Just want to bring up your book here, Top Gun's Top 10 Leadership Lessons from the Cockpit. Just wanted to show our viewers that there. And any final thoughts today? Would love to talk to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's always great to talk about national security and where America's going. Have a great night.
All right, see you, Guy. Thanks. All right, we're going to go to commercial. We'll see you back here in 2 minutes. We're going to have a live report from Wisconsin on an update on what Kyle Rittenhouse is up to. You remember he is the 18-year-old who's been charged in the murder of 2 protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, surrounding the shooting of Jacob Blake last August. So we're going to get the update from one of our Fox reporters in the field. See you in 2 minutes.
This many great movies, you can't afford to miss a minute. View our schedule online at moviestvnetwork.com and set a movies reminder.